Hi guys, thank you for tuning in to another review on the BMW XM. I think it's so horrible that it deserved a second video, burning it down to the ground. And this time we'll discuss the interior of the XM.
So we talked about a coupe-ish roofline, and of course that brings challenges when you design the interior. How did you deal with the headroom clearance?
Yeah, for this model it's important to look at the head clearance on the rear bench.
Well, we can be quite honest from the get-go and say that this is such a massive car that it's hard to mess up the head clearance in the back, one could almost argue. And of course there's this drooping roofline, but of course it's the visual, which is the outline of the side graphic, the DLO, the daylight opening. That is what makes the car look like it's smaller, basically, in the rear than it actually is, because that graphic of the DLO is a bit smaller than the actual car, the actual roof line, the actual roof height. So also interior space is. So a very common, superbly common trick. Basically on any single production car, you have a roofline that, although it's usually dropping, the side graphic of the windows is dropping more. So there is more space than it looks like there might be. So especially on such a massive SUV, if you don't have any headroom in the back, you just completely messed up the packaging.
The star of the interior is the rear bench, and in order to have that lounge-like atmosphere, for the backstage feeling, as we described it before, it's important to have enough head clearance. The outer windows are quite stiff, so this gives clearance to the side, but the head clearance really is the hard point for the roof. So from that point we went forward in order to create that kind of wedge shape, declining roofline.
All right, so maybe we jump inside and take a look at this, because there are a lot of interesting things happening there and a lot of new features too, so let's do that.
Yeah, and it's again about contrast. When we say color contrast, it's also the contrast between front and rear, so it's backstage and front stage.
Understood. All right,
okay,
perfect.
cool.
Let's take a look. So Marcus, we're inside the BMW XM and it is absolutely beautiful. I don't often say this, but it is well thought out. It's quite unique and quite interesting, and I think that's kind of what people wanted to see from BMW lately, something more unique, different, and this one absolutely is. So with that being said, please walk me through the design, and then we can talk about the different carbon fiber here and the integration of the screens and all of that. So it's your show. So
thank you. And the front part of the interior, it's driver oriented. And this means steering wheel, curved display, center console, gear shifter. It's all ergonomically in reach. Okay. And the curved display, you can see here for the first time a very bold 2D graphic. Okay. Also working with the M typical colors. Okay. And then all little details, like on the steering wheel or here in the center console, see these are the 3 M colors as little frames, are showing the M DNA. And this CFK finisher got an interwoven copper thread. And
does this look like the ultimate driving machine, or does it look like the ultimate Terminator machine? Just by looking at the graphics, I would say this is some weird unpleasant combination between standard production stuff, like the gear lever and the whole center console and switch gear there, the steering wheel, and then these really rough, underdeveloped, and of a completely different design language, graphical features. It's, again, I will refer to the first video of the exterior here. It's like they put in a lot of different ideas into a box, and they shook the box and just threw it onto the floor, and that's sort of what came out. And then they say, okay, look, that's a bit of BMW M here, and that's a bit of this, and that's a bit of that. But there's nothing fresh here, and there's nothing that is typical BMW anymore either. These interiors used to be very dynamic, driver focused, wrapped around the driver. Here we just have a big square screen tucked onto the dashboard, and on the right hand side in front of the passenger, let's say, is just a slab of leather. That's it. It's just flat. It's extremely rough and inconsistent in its form language, in its use of shapes, facets, let's say, surfacing. It's like somebody grabbed out of a selection of different part bins and threw it all into an interior.
And this for us is again the combination of BMW M power and these luxurious materials. And in the front end you can see we are embedded in vintage brown leather. Again, in contrast to the colder, darker petrol tone you can see here in the lower part of the dashboard or on the doors. And this again creates that contrast so that you have a kind of tension. And the outer vents, they are also integrating the dashboard and the door, and also were used as a frame for all necessary functions you need for opening the doors or working with the locking system.
Understood. And this is quite unique also, right? So those are all, touch controls for the climate control, basically, and that's quite unique. I've not seen it yet.
And it's also a little reminiscent for our 3M stripes.
I see now.
The blue, the two blue and the red got the same angle. So it's not only by colors or in 2D. You also see that as in a way integrated in the three-dimensional parts of the car.
Understood. From my personal experience, I can tell right away that I have a lot more space in the car than I would have in an X7. So I can see that even the door design is kind of scooped out a little bit, so it offers more elbow room. And I'm a quite tall guy. I mean, 1.9 meters tall almost.
Okay.
and I feel extremely, comfortable here.
Yeah, it's because it's a massive car. It's no achievement to make a massive SUV feel relatively spacious up front.
But can you tell me about this kind of cocoon-like of design? What was the idea behind that? I mean, you mentioned lounging and concerts and all of that.
Yeah, what we have here in the front is that driver orientation. Therefore, it's all integrated, all these functions in that wraparound frame over here. Here you can see all these details you need for driving fast.
Sure.
And then on the passenger side, there we play with the materials.
Sure.
Here you can see all that luxury materials, this vintage brown leather, which is specific for that car. And this again also shows the contrast between driver, passengers, and then later on in the rear you see even more passenger orientation.
Gotcha, perfect. So this is the first BMW where you might want to spend some time in the back too, so maybe we do that and talk about some of the design there, and then we'll jump to the back of the car and tell us more about that. All right, so Marcus, I'm behind the front passenger seats, and I can tell right away I have so much room here. It's extremely roomy.
It's extremely roomy. Yeah, let's now have a look at the position of his knees. He has zero support. He's sitting on his buttocks basically, and the entire upper leg is unsupported. This is just basic bad ergonomics.
But at the same time, it's very luxurious. So tell me once again about the materials used, about the design here, and then of course about this 3D shaped roofline, which is quite unique.
It's definitely unique. It's also as stylish as, let's say, the tacked on aftermarket so-called fake Starlight headliner reminiscing of Rolls-Royce. This is, I mean, the pattern, the idea, the materials are just completely out of the blue tacked on to the headliner. There's nothing in that car, exterior or interior, that looks even remotely like the triangular and trapezium formed shapes we see on the headliner.
Yeah, it's all about uniqueness. You just named it. And when we said the front part of the interior is driver-oriented, here it's passenger-oriented. And in the front, the brown leather shade was dominating. Here you see that colder, darker petrol tone.
Okay.
And the star of the interior here is the rear bench with its wraparound feeling. You can see it here on the side with your arm. It's then seamlessly integrated to the armrests in the doors, and that rear bench is covered with velvet material, very soft, and it got a Chesterfield kind of quilting.
Okay.
The diamond-shaped inserts with the headrests, they've got a leather trim accordingly to the front seats, so that they are not completely alien to each other. The materials are different, the colors are different, but you see an integration simply by shapes.
Very interesting.
And then when you're sitting inside the car, you can see, you mentioned before, you're a tall guy, you have enough head clearance, but also due to the straight, stiff outer windows, you also got a lot of head clearance to the side. And when you're sitting in the back of the car, that backstage lounge atmosphere, you can enjoy this sculptured roof liner. It's like a prism structure, like a relief, like a piece of art, and it's indirectly illuminated from the sides in different colors, and also the reading lights are integrated like diamonds in that part. And it's interesting. It's not a new technology. It's not expensive. We have created something new simply out of existing materials. All cars got headliners and indirect illumination. It's also not rocket science, I would say.
I would say the entire design of this car is not rocket science. It's actually rather shite, including the headliner. I mean, there is literally nothing new here. The front end versus rear end, color coding in different materials and different upholstery has been done since basically I would say the 20s and the 30s of the previous century, where mainly the driver was sitting usually outside on leather, and the passengers in the rear were covered with a roof and had beautiful non-leathers. So they had fabrics, because fabrics in the old days was the true luxury, and leathers were used usually by farmers and other people that really needed the material for its ruggedness and its durability. And truly fortunate and rich people were sitting in the back of their car being chauffeured, and they were sitting on what was then the epitome of technology, woven fabrics. That was the highest thing achievable almost on your furniture and then also in your car. So that's nothing new. To translate that into a modern car is also nothing new, because, for instance, Range Rover done that. Not just the current new Range Rover has that as one of the options, but also, for instance, SV Coupe, the three-door car that never in the end came into production, and I was blessed to be able to design one for a customer, an actual coach-built car. But anyway, the SV Coupe by Range Rover had that two-sided, let's say, interior, two different colors. it's not a bad concept. You know, it's an interesting concept. It's you could say relevant for the way the car is used, because there's a driver-focused area and the passengers are in the different part of that car, not just physically, but also in a way conceptually. They're not in the driving seat. They're in that car for different reasons. They're either being driven or like chauffeured, or they're, for instance, children in the back. So sure, different materials are interesting, and yeah, maybe even a small shout out to the color and material people of BMW for actually trying to find something other than just leather. The selection of concept cars that have recently been presented by BMW are all equally bad conceptually, but color and trim wise, there is sometimes something interesting going on there. I'll be honest. There is some innovation there, but that's truly the only part of not just the XM, but the entire BMW lineup of recent production cars as well as concept cars that is remotely interesting or well done. Color and materials, and from design to conceptual thinking to it's all just rubbish. Incredible.
But design creates here an extra value, an added value.
Very cool. So this might be the first BMW that I really want to spend time in the rear bench. Honestly, it is quite spectacular. But how about we take a look at the rear end, because there's some interesting things there as well, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay, motor on.
So we're behind the BMW XM, and as I always like to say, this is the view that most people will see on the road anyway. So with that joke aside, how about you tell me a little bit about the design here, because there are some interesting elements and quite new, especially the exhaust, but then of course we want to talk about the proportions in the back too.
Yeah, so the rear end, I would say it's a dynamic, powerful statement. And when we also go top down, as we did on the front end, we see a very unique shape. So we have a kind of castellation in the roof. The outer parts of the roof are higher, and then the central part is slightly lower. This creates unique proportions and shapes, but it's also good for the airflow, for the aerodynamics. And as Frank explained before, the rear window is integrated in the rear volume of the car seamlessly, like on modern smartphones. And in addition to that, we have...
In addition to that, it looks absolutely hideous because, like I mentioned in the exterior video, the proportions are completely off. It has this sort of visual, it's way too heavy on top. It has a horrible stance. The details are tacky. These two stacked exhausts, I mean, come on, BMW. I don't know where to start. It's so poor. It's so bad. And this is celebrating 50 years of M.
Black rear lights, when they are switched off, maybe you can switch them off. They are completely pit black. Now you can switch them off again. They are three-dimensionally designed, okay, and they are working like a three-dimensional clamp. They are integrating the rear and the side of the car. Okay. And also on the side you can see the rear light is shaped as an arrow blade. This is also good for aerodynamics as well as for very modern graphics. Okay. And
is this the largest M logo on any BMW so far?
At the moment, yes, but what you can see here, the rear light cut got exactly the same angle as our XM badge, 30 degrees. So however you measure it, it's 30 or 60 degrees. This is the typical M badge, and we have cut it here that way. And we have left out the central BMW badge. We have positioned it in the upper outer corners of the window as a reminiscent of the classic BMW M1.
Yeah. I mean, its designer is turning in its grave. It's like I don't even know where to start. Like, it's an insult to their iconic car, and it's the easiest way, if you have no other ideas, to just copy and paste something on a completely, utterly different car in any way, shape, or form, and then say it's a homage to that car because it has these recognizable graphics with 2 logos in it. Yeah, but it's conceptually empty, and it's not at all helpful to what you're trying to achieve here, which is apparently a luxury SUV. Understand.
And the rear end, yeah, it's also a powerful statement, and it's aggressively shaped. There's a working diffuser. And we see
Tailpipes. I mean, that's
M-typical tailpipes by saying that it's 2 times 2 of them, but they are vertically oriented, not horizontally, and they've got a specific
look that is basically the Renault logo. So yeah, we don't only have 2 BMW logos on the rear end, we also have 2 Renault logos, because actually, you know, the French are actually really good at car design. Renault is making fantastically consistent concept cars as well as production cars, and we just felt like honoring our colleagues in France for doing such an excellent, marvelous job at car design, because we are utterly failing at it ourselves.
Exclusive hexagonal design, also accordingly to the shape of the front kidney frame. So it's always the same kind of design language.
so
they are functional. They are really tubes behind it. It's not an ornament. And the car is got a very stable, sporty stance.
No, it doesn't. Look at it. It has this bulbous, flubby overhang towards the sides. The wheels look inwards rather than outwards. Remember, I discussed the second generation BMW X5. That car actually had a very powerful stance. These wheels were actually outwards of the body. It had fantastic shoulders, and then rich, sculpted, strong wheel arches surrounding strong wheels, nicely concave. And from basically any perspective, from the rear, from three-quarter sides, it looked fantastic, always planted on the road. This doesn't. It just doesn't.
Due to the tapering of the greenhouse and the wide shoulders. And we are supporting that by pushing out the vertical reflectors to a maximum. So the car is really powerful, strong and wide.
Well, I think it's another shame. BMW has made some truly fascinating concepts in the past, also homage cars under Bengal, mainly truly fantastic, real BMWs pushing the boundaries on what car design could be, on what BMWs could be, and they were the seeds of creativity that were pushed into production, and this is not that. This is not that. Bring back Bengal.